Brought to you by PlayStation Store. Access to the ultimate in games and entertainment.
Hey there folks, Chris Waters here. Honored to welcome Greg Johnson to the set, developer, creator of Toejam and Earl. Greg, thank you for joining us.
All right.
Hello.
Happy to be here.
Justin Haywald hanging out to chat about Toejam and Earl back in the groove, but this is the game you guys currently have on Kickstarter, trying to bring TJ&E back.
That's right. Well, we're trying.
Well, you're trying. You got a couple more days left. You're about $20,000 short, but
so is this a new game? Is for people that maybe haven't heard of Toejam and Earl, or this version of the game you're doing, is this a completely new adventure? Are you remaking the old game? What is this?
It is a new game, but it's very strongly based on the original game, Game 1, pulling in elements from Game 2 and Game 3. The whole idea behind it is sort of a nostalgia blast for all the TJ&E fans that have been asking for it for so many years.
Yeah, so that nostalgia, let's just do a quick little development history here.
Sure.
Toejam and Earl came out in 1991 for the Sega Genesis. It sort of attained this cult status. It wasn't like the #1 selling game for months and months on end, but it had this real big momentum and sort of really caught hold with folks.
Yeah, it actually didn't do very well at first. It was a very slow growth. In fact, Sega was looking at it initially and thought it might be a failure, which is why you probably heard the story, right? Why they asked us to kind of shift gears after maybe 3 months or so, and why we ended up going at right angles and doing a side-scrolling platformer instead.
Sure. So for the first game, it was sort of, you're exploring these big layered worlds cooperatively, but then the second game, you guys were working on a sequel, and then the publisher called you up and said, actually, what, like side-scrolling platformers are really hot right now? Can you please make that happen?
That's right. Well, that's kind of pretty much was the mainstay of the games they did in those days. You probably remember, right? That was the thing they knew how to sell, and they figured that it wasn't doing well because it wasn't that, and they said, can you give us a game with bigger characters and more action? And we thought, and still make it Toejam and Earl? Okay,
I guess
we'll try.
And then the same thing happened to you guys a decade later, working on Toejam and Earl 3 for the Xbox. It was again harking back to the original format, but at that point, it wasn't 2D platformers that were the hot business, it was 3D.
Yeah, that's right. That was right around year 2000 when we started in on that. And that's when 3D, was all blocky and clunky, and the Xbox was just coming out, and Dreamcast, of course, is what we started making it on, and 3D was just starting to look good. And so that's what we went for, and we did start out to make a remake of Game 1. That was the plan. And, stacked levels and all of the same stuff that was in Game 1, and then we got about, 3/4 of the way through? We were
Three-quarters?
Yeah, we were mostly done. Right, we even had it on the Dreamcast so you could play online multiplayer, and we had all kinds of great stuff in there. The Dreamcast was a great machine, too. I really loved that version of the game. But then Sega got kind of nervous and started getting worried that it wouldn't appeal to new people and that it was too old school. So they asked us to get rid of the stacked levels, which is kind of why it's random, right? So you replay the game each time you play. It's different.
The layouts are all different.
Right, and you die, right? That was another old school thing they asked us to change, was like the permadeath thing where you die and then you start the game over again. They said, no, people don't do that anymore.
Permadeath is not going to be popular again for another 7 to 9 years.
Right. Yeah, so they said we want bosses, we want collectibles, and we want mini games and cinematic sequences and gates and keys.
Flashing back to like every Banjo-Kazooie clone to ever exist, that whole operation, it was an era, right?
Do you feel justified, I mean, especially now seeing so many, not necessarily remakes, but games that borrow from those sensibilities of older games, right? Things that come to mind immediately are like Shovel Knight, taking those old platform games, Axiom Verge, which is Super Metroid. Do you feel justified that this is actually the kind of thing that people want?
Well, encouraged might be a better word, because I don't blame Sega for their decision at the time. in fact, we went along with it thinking, well, okay, you guys know better than we do, and we want to make a game that's successful, and if you really think that's what this needs to be, and it's your money on the line, okay.
All right.
It was hard, you know, but now, yeah, it is nice to see all that old stuff kind of coming back again, all those mechanics, and I'm feeling like, oh, all right, well, maybe we can really go back old school. And but I still wasn't sure, you know. I shopped this around to publishers over the years, and Mark Vorsanger too. You know, he was the original creator with me, but he kind of got out of the game business maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay.
But yeah, they didn't bite and said, nah, the property's too old. We don't think there's enough of a demand. So I've been getting emails though constantly, and then you guys are probably very aware of the whole retro movement, right? And all of this nostalgia that's just been growing and growing over the last 4 or 5 years. So I've been getting this increasing demand, and now with Kickstarter, I thought, well, let's see. This will be a chance to really test the waters and see if that old school stuff is still what people want.
And we've seen some success with things like Wasteland, feeding off of people's nostalgia for those games that, aren't changed at all. It's the same formula, the same kind of art style. That these are things that at least a group of people want, but publishers aren't as willing to put money behind it, even though there is a demand.
Yeah, right. It is. It's understandably risky, I guess. But that's the wonderful thing about going indie and things like Kickstarter or Indiegogo. So we can just give it a shot and see what happens. And you even get to test the waters before you spend all that money and build the game. So.
All right, so Kickstarter is winding down. You've been at it about a month with Toejam and Earl back in the groove.
Yeah, that's right.
Just a few days away from wrapping up. What has been what's sort of been an early, or I guess later, takeaway from running a Kickstarter campaign for trying to bring this back?
Oh my gosh.
I'm sure we could do an entire other interview on that, but give me one or two, top level, would you do it again? Would you go back to Kickstarter?
Yeah, it's funny. This is, I don't know how inappropriate this metaphor may or may not be, but it's kind of like having a baby, It's sort of like you don't ask a woman if she'll have another baby right before the baby's born. You got to wait a month or two because it's intense. I have a lot of friends in the industry, and I'm lucky that way because I've been around a long time. And Tim Schafer is one person who's clearly, been around the block as far as Kickstarter goes. And so I've been getting a lot of advice, and I was warned. But man, I kind of should lie down on this couch because I think I might start a support group for people that do Kickstarters. So it's intense.
All right.
I had one quick question.
Yeah.
A lot of developers, especially indie guys now, they get to design their games to be, purposefully retro. But when I look at Toejam and Earl, I don't think anything screams 90s more than the design of those characters. Did you give any thought to revamping it or to maybe changing it to make it more 2000s? 2015s?
Well, no, I'm glad you said that actually because that's the whole point. Yeah, and it is. I really wanted it. Maybe we even went too far, if that's possible. I don't know, but I looked for an artist, this guy Nathan Shorts, that does his whole thing is sort of retro comics, and it's all about the I grew up child of the '70s funk this and funk that. I was in my high school. People were carrying those boom boxes around their shoulder, playing Lowrider and stuff, and yeah, I just thought it would be really fun for people. So we went for the, the 2D sprites and this sort of comic booky look. The '90s sort of Schoolhouse Rock kind of look. So I wanted to do something that was fresh. I didn't want to just redo the same thing. So, and that's tricky, when you do a sequel, because people want it the same, but they also want it different, and it's kind of this line you got to walk. So
tricky stuff, delving into the past, but making it fresh again.
Yeah, right.
Greg, thank you so much for coming on and talking.
You bet.
Toejam and Earl back in the groove. Just a few days left on Kickstarter, folks. Check it out if you're interested. Thanks for watching.